No, I think the college experience is really important, and I think that's a great thing about USC. Living on campus, I think, is a big part of it. And honestly, it just kind of is like a separation from like home, like kind of getting away from your past and making like a new life for yourself, I guess.
It's an important time for personal growth, independence, for friendships, like a self-discovery journey, kind of figuring out who you are.
New experiences, new friends, getting an education, setting up a good future.
College. It's supposed to be the time of your life. The time for learning, for bettering yourself, and for a lot of students, sex. Now, sex. It's something that virtually everyone has, but not a lot of people like to talk about, especially the topic of consent. Now, 1 in 4 women will be sexually assaulted during their time on campus, and that number is 1 in 16 for men. Why is this the case? Are these colleges full of rapists? Well, we don't think so. We think the reason for these drastically high numbers is because the issue of consent is something that oftentimes gets misconstrued among the student population.
I think for me, it's just saying yes. Like, yes is the only thing that means consent. So, I mean, if it is even like 99% yes, it's not a yes, it's a no. And you wouldn't want to go there. Yeah.
So this is a thing where like I have a hard time with what's like the socially acceptable mentality now, because like you can both be like clearly interested without either of you having to say the word yes, but I think like nonverbal consent would just be like continuation of physical activity as opposed to just stopping and like shutting down or being still. If you're kissing the person back, like you're consenting. But if the person's kissing you and you just freeze, like that's not consent.
If someone doesn't want to do something, probably shouldn't do something with them. Yeah.
The word consent.
Yeah.
I would say both parties agreeing to partake in an activity. For example, if a guy wanted to do something with a girl and a girl said no, I'm not comfortable, continuing to convince her to do it and telling her that you like her so much and that she should do this is kind of not consent at all, because you're making them uncomfortable and making them do something that they already told you that they did not want to do.
When you say like explicitly stated, like I don't necessarily think that's like verbal. Like you said, like a lot of communication, it's non-verbal, but definitely you could take away consent anytime, like through the same like non-verbal or like verbal communications.
I think a big part of this is communication, and it goes either verbally or non-verbally. There's people who react differently to being assaulted in a way, and some people react more aggressively. Some people are too shy or too timid or scared to respond.
To find out more about consent, we sat down with Women's Studies professor Dr. Karina Alarius to get her thoughts about why consent can be so confusing.
I mean, I think consent, the most important thing is that it has to be communicated and understood by all parties involved. So there has to be some clear communication, and anything that can be done to that effect to establish clear communication of, yes, I'm willing, I want to be involved in this, I think should be done and has to be done, so that there's no question mark in anyone's head about what's actually happening. Basically, because women are socialized to become weak, passive, compliant, they tend to say yes, right? They're taught you should say yes, you should be polite, you should go along with things. So if you're up against a conditioning of your entire life that has encouraged you as a girl or a young woman to say yes, then you're going to have a harder time saying no. How men are, conditioned to believe that what they are is inviolable, that they're aggressive, that they should be the ones to start things up. And so if that's the case, you have these two roles coming together, of course, in a heterosexual framework. That's not speaking to other sexualities.
Sexual minorities.
But within a heterosexual framework, she argues, this becomes a recipe for rape to happen.
People have attributed the high number of sexual assaults to something called rape culture. We see examples of this in the media with the show Degrassi, where the main female character, Paige, gets sexually assaulted at a party, yet still blames herself.
Dean, it's so loud out here. Wanna maybe go someplace a little more private? After you.
Is this okay?
No. Yeah. Just take it slow, okay? Dean, I said slow.
what Dean did was illegal. You know that, right?
Yeah, and what about what I did?
You didn't do anything.
So I didn't dress like a slut? I didn't drink? I didn't come on to him in front of the whole party?
Paige.
I guess I didn't ask him to go upstairs either.
You said no.
It doesn't matter.
We had a good time at that party together, didn't we?
Dean, you...
I what? I didn't do anything. Just had a good time.
You raped me.
You wanted it.
Later on, we see a reluctance from others to believe her.
When my client put his hand inside your blouse, did you immediately reject him? Slap him. For the record, please.
No.
This is very difficult for you, I know, but when my client touched your breast, how did you respond? Did you enjoy it?
To learn more about rape culture, we spoke with Charnay Mankins from End Rape on Campus.
Rape culture is this normalization of violence, specifically sexual violence, against people, but primarily women, and then especially transgender folks and gender nonconforming people. At very early ages, we are teaching, we're conditioning boys to first be aggressive, and that is and that's like how you show that you're interested into someone, in someone. And we're teaching young girls to accept this type of abuse without saying anything. Of course, when we see this with bigger issues of rape or sexual assault, this is why there's like a culture of silence, or why people don't just inherently don't believe women when they come forward with accusations of rape and sexual violence, because we are taught from a very young age that certain things are okay.
The YWCA is an organization that focuses on empowering women. They create real change for women, families, and communities through advocacy and local programming. One of their focuses is on health and safety. We talked to Shatil Cheap, director of the Downtown LA YWCA, to learn more about consent and sexual assault.
You know, there's a lot of misconceptions around what rape looks like, and so most of the time it's actually an acquaintance. Majority of the times, probably about 3 out of 4 times, it is someone that the person knows that has been the person that has engaged in that sexual assault and rape and perpetrated that violence against that person. So it really can be anybody, and I think that's sometimes what is frightening and scary for some people when they hear that information, is that it can be anyone that you know, and oftentimes the perpetrator is utilizing the trust that the survivor has in them, the victim has in them, and is taking that and using that to their advantage to then sexually assault and rape a person. You know, so it can be a friend, it can be a neighbor, it could be a trusted official, it could be an authority figure, it can be your significant other. And so there's so many situations where it's the person that you think that you can trust and that you care about in some capacity, and they're the ones that are then perpetrating that violence.
In the past couple of years, Greek organizations have been criticized as being a breeding ground for sexual assault. Multiple studies have shown that fraternity members are 3 times more likely to commit sexual assault compared to other college men. Images such as these are part of the reason that fraternities maintain a negative reputation. Numerous colleges have resorted to shutting down individual fraternities because of sexual assault cases. Notable figures such as USC alum Will Ferrell, a member of Delta Tau Delta, questioned whether to shut down the Greek system altogether.
You're my boy, Blue!
We talked to Dr. Janine Anderson, a USC professor who teaches about sexual communication, about the prevalence of sexual assault in Greek organizations. She offers a unique perspective because she was a sorority member at her university and has been involved with the sorority for over a decade.
Yes, sexual assaults take place in Greek life, perhaps more frequently than other places, because you have a concentrated geographic space of male and female students who are using substances, alcohol and other ones. However, it's unfair to just wholly label Greek life as risky, right? It's wholly unfair to label the Greek organizations as sites for automatic assault. Okay? What we do know is that Greek organizations, members of Greek organizations, as well as the actual infrastructure, probably needs to be modified to reduce risk for young people. I don't think it's fair to level the responsibility for reducing sexual assault on college campuses solely on the shoulders of students in Greek life. The standard for consent does change. An affirmative, enthusiastic yes is the gold standard. An affirmative, enthusiastic, verbal yes. A head nod is not an verbal, enthusiastic yes. Youth need to be trained, really, in how to engage in these kind of direct conversations with their partners. What does it mean to say, yes, I want to kiss and maybe fondle, but I don't want to have oral sex or any intercourse? Or yes, I am fine with oral sex, but I really am not okay with intercourse. And even if I say yes when I've had too many cocktails, I really want you to respect that I'm saying no now. Having conversations when partners are sober is much easier in low arousal situations than when you're highly aroused and intoxicated. So the whole range of when and where and how to have conversations is part of consent for coupled individuals.
To get a more personal perspective, we talked to David, a high-ranking member of a USC fraternity.
Overall, I think the row is getting better. It's definitely better than it was 10 years ago. Yeah, there's definitely a progressive shift in terms of from when I started and now. I know now we have to go to like on campus like interactive seminars where you have to do like workshops, and it's not just sitting there and listening to boring stuff for like 3 hours. You actually have to interact with people. You have group leaders. You come across scenarios, so they give you, you know, if this happens, what's the best course of action to take. And I think that really cleared up with a lot of people, because like sometimes you don't know, like you know, it's just like about consent and stuff. So there was extremely tough scenarios in these workshops, and a lot of people were stumped, and I think a lot of people came out of that workshop thinking like, oh, well, at least now I know more than I came in. I think it comes down to just awareness, and the more it's mentioned, the more people notice how serious it is. I think that it comes down to like a whole house kind of attitude and what you want to stand for. And I know that a lot of people in my house just wouldn't stand for things that, you know, that breach consent or that borderline on sexual assault.
Moving forward, we asked our interviewees to provide us with their thoughts on what could be done to resolve this epidemic.
People oftentimes think the brick and mortar classroom is the best place for training, right? But what we really know is, if we think about all the other places that you train at the gym, right? Like, you don't go to a classroom to train for a marathon. You get yourself out on the track, right? You don't take a self-defense class in your classroom. You actually on the mat practicing. And so I feel like what happens is that, unfortunately, we put students in a classroom and give them information hoping that it will translate to these high arousal situations, which oftentimes fails. I don't know if anybody has experience remembering how you learned how to drive. You had some fender benders and you had some oops. You scratched a few things, right? But you learned how to become a better driver. And so some kind of course that really scaffolds people through, whether that's in pseudo environments, controlled environments where there might be some dancing or whatnot. There could be some really creative ways in which we can actually help people transpose themselves into a real life scenario. Sitting in a classroom, looking at a PowerPoint about what consent is, and perhaps some, cheesy videos is not going to get it. To practice with your girlfriends in a controlled environment, to actually role play with a particular partner, training needs to be hands-on, it needs to be real, and it needs to be theory-based. So actually identifying areas of self-efficacy, empowerment, those kind of things, to really make training something that people will remember beyond the 10 hours they are in the classroom.
I think people get too excited about going to their first party and stuff. Like, relax, you'll be fine. Yeah, you'll just take it easy no matter what it is. And then also go with friends. Go with as many friends as you can. Talk to them beforehand and be like, hey, like, let's make sure we all come back at the same time. um, and just look out for each other. Be aware of who you're surrounding yourself with. Honestly, during rush, it's really important because it's just a week, and then you're either pledging or whatever you're doing. It's a big deal. So you need to get to know these people as best you can. Don't be scared to be critical. Like, you need to be at this point, honestly, because if you're going to join house, you're going to be there for the long haul, and you want to be comfortable with the people you're surrounding, and hopefully they feel the same way as you do when it comes to serious matters. Always know an active member in the house, because the last thing you want is for something to happen and you just have no idea like who you need to talk to. Know their risk manager. That's a huge deal. That's that's going to be the guy that's like at the door.
Okay.
And he is 100% in charge of that.
I think, well, the first thing that colleges and universities need to do is actually abide by Title IX and like Clery Act laws. Like, all of these federal laws are put into place to protect students and ensure that their most vulnerable populations can receive an equal type of education as everyone else. And when schools just don't follow them or feel like they don't have to because no one's going to do anything about it because they have such a big endowment, then that's where we kind of see like these problems continue to go on. If schools had a more comprehensive sexual misconduct policy, then we'll be able to see more rapists and perpetrators expelled from college campuses, and like that kind of sets a precedent that we don't allow this type of behavior on our campus.
As we know with any trauma, we don't know how we're going to respond in advance. And the problem legally is that many people respond to something like rape by freezing. That means they can't talk, they can't move, they are frozen in fear in that moment. And so that has proven very hard under the law, where the law has required that you show you resisted, you show that you used a certain amount of force to resist. That's not possible, and it doesn't take into account something like when one freezes in response to trauma, but that freezing happens especially when there's an acquaintance or a friend that's the perpetrator.
You know, we really want all survivors to seek out healing in their own way, and whether that means connecting with our services in our agency or not, I just want to impart that there are people out there in the community and in the world and in society that really care about you and that are really here for you. And so we want to really honor the experiences of survivors and know that they are not alone in their experience.
Obviously, there's still a long way to go, but we are taking strides to make sure no one feels unsafe on our campus or any campus. To learn more, visit these resources here. If you or anyone you know has been sexually assaulted, visit here.